Let's start with the most significant move the Browns have made so far as of recording. And all right, bear with me here. I'm going to try this. Ogbo Okoronkwo is signed as the Browns, top free agent to this point, obviously. An edge rusher from Houston, Mary Kay, a guy who you kind of look at some things that he does well. He was 13th. This is from PFF among qualified edge rushers. He was 13th in their win percentage stat. He had 36 pressures that PFF credited him with. Now, some of those numbers, I know there's some ESPN stats that maybe are a little bit different from that, but they're all sort of in that same range. What this guy did last season, even though the sack numbers weren't like sky high, what he did last season in creating pressure and win rate, all of those things, he would have easily been the Browns' second best edge rusher. So this feels like a very nice kind of, I don't know if I should call it under the radar, but a little bit of an under the radar signing by the Browns.
Yeah, I think so. I really do think so. I had mentioned possibly them signing Yannick Ngakwe, who had 9.5 sacks for the Colts last year. But, this is a really good young guy. And he came at, I would say, not a bad price. I mean, it's 3 years, $19 million. That's a really nice number. And he could get that up to $22 million. And then he's got 12.5 guaranteed. That's a nice contract for him. He had signed a 1-year deal with the Texans last year for $3.5 million. So this is nice for him. He just set his family up and himself up with $12.5 million guaranteed. So it's a good deal for him. It's a good deal for the Browns. And, he only started 8 games. So if he's now going to start 17 games, you can reasonably expect that in Jim Schwartz's offense, he might double his sack totals and be a double-digit sacker. And, that's pretty darn good. He's got a lot of upside potential. And, the more I've been, hearing and reading about him a little bit, the more exciting it is that they added him for Browns fans and for the Browns, that they added him to their lineup. And yeah, I think that, it's a really, really good pickup, not necessarily one that everybody was waiting on the edge of their seat for it to happen. But, his film is good. The numbers are good and the outlook looks great.
Yeah, Ashley, 3 years with the Rams, won a Super Bowl there in 2021, a year with Houston, and just a guy as you start to see the advanced stats come out, some of the metrics, from the analytics community, I can see the Browns sitting there and saying, this guy still has more to unlock. There's something there, and Jim Schwartz can get it out of him. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of, he's going to have a bigger role, but it reminds me a little bit of like Tack McKinley, where I think they probably saw some advanced stats that they really liked could translate into actual production on the field.
Yeah, and I think even knowing how much value this, front office, this coaching staff places on pressures, right? Like 36 pressures, just looked quickly at the Browns' PFF grades from this last year's defense. I mean, he would have easily been the second most pressures on this team. Myles Garrett had 73, and then the drop-off is to Jadeveon Clowney at 29 after that. So I do think, you get a guy who has something more to give, like Mary Kay said, only started in about half of those games last year, coupled with the emphasis Jim Schwartz places on getting those pass rushers good one-on-one matchups, letting them line out further. All of those things, I think, are really promising for him. And yeah, it might not be a name that, like Mary Kay said, people were waiting on. But I think knowing what the Browns had last year, it's an obvious kind of step up based on some of those stats alone.
Mary Kay, is this the number 2?